Before the grid goes down and the comfort of your current reality evaporates, do yourself a favor and hit the like button and subscribe, because the information you're about to hear isn't just about survival, it is about rewriting the rules of engagement when the world stops being polite. Imagine it has been 72 hours since the power failed. The silence in your neighborhood isn't peaceful, it is heavy, suffocating, and punctuated only by the barking of nervous dogs. You are standing in your hallway, gripping a flashlight that you haven't turned on because you don't want to become a beacon in the dark. Then you hear it, a knock at the door. It's not a gang of marauders wearing leather jackets and wielding chains. It's Tim from across the street. Tim, whose kids play with yours. Tim, who borrowed your ladder last month. But when you look through the peephole, you don't see a neighbor. You see a man who hasn't eaten in 2 days, eyes wide with a panic that is rapidly curdling into aggression. He knows you have a generator. He suspects you have food. And right now, the only thing standing between his desperate family and your survival stockpile is a thin layer of wood and your own hesitation. The greatest threat to your survival isn't the collapse of infrastructure. It is the collapse of the social inhibition mechanism in the people you think you know. We are going to dismantle the dangerous myth that community spirit survives starvation, and I'm going to show you how to secure your home against the most dangerous predator of all, the nice guy next door who has run out of options. We will solve this using basic household physics, psychological barriers, and a refusal to be a victim. The first step in hardening your sanctuary begins before the crisis with a notebook and a cold, analytical eye, employing what I call the deprivation matrix. You need to look at your neighbors not as friends, but as variables in a caloric equation. Take a simple notebook and observe how the people around you handle minor stress right now when the lights are on and the grocery stores are full. Watch the guy who screams at the barista for getting his order wrong, or the woman who panics when her internet is down for an hour. These are your red target. They have low stress tolerance and zero adaptability. When the system fails, they will not become resourceful. They will become homicidal because they lack the emotional regulation to handle deprivation. By identifying them now, you are building a threat map of your immediate vicinity. You aren't judging them morally, you are assessing their dependency. When the collapse happens, you will know exactly who will come knocking first, and you can mentally prepare to treat them not as Tim or Jennifer, but as biological threats acting on instinct. Once you have identified the threats, you must deploy information compartmentalization, specifically using a technique called the tiered disclosure system. In a survival scenario, truth is a liability and silence is armor. So you must learn to lie convincingly to the people you love. Your friends and neighbors will ask if you are prepared, and your natural instinct will be to reassure them or brag about your stockpile. Crush that instinct. Instead, you need to practice the art of helpful deflection. When a neighbor asks if you have extra food, you don't just say no. You say, I'm down to my last few cans, but I heard there's a relief truck specifically heading to the church on Main Street. You are using information as a decoy. You aren't refusing to help. You are helpfully directing their desperation away from your doorstep and toward a public resource node. This paints you as a fellow victim rather than a resource node, making you a useless target for their predation. Now that you have deflected their attention, you must physically harden the perimeter, because eventually the polite knocking will turn into kicking. Most people think a locked door is security, but a standard deadbolt is held in place by half-inch screws drilled into a decorative pine frame. One solid kick from a desperate father, and your front door becomes a welcome mat, shattering the wood and letting the world in. You need to go to your toolbox, find a drill, and replace those short screws in the strike plate with 3-inch hardened steel screws. When you drive these 3-inch screws into the wall, you're no longer anchoring your lock to the flimsy door frame. You are anchoring it to the structural studs, the actual bones of the house. This simple action transforms your door from a psychological barrier into a physical barricade that can withstand repeated assaults, buying you the critical seconds you need to arm yourself or escape. While your door is physically tough, your mind must be tougher, which brings us to the Trojan horse defense. The most dangerous weapon your neighbors possess is not a gun, but your own empathy. They will not attack you with force. Initially, they will attack you with pity. They will bring a weeping child to your door or a crying spouse, using them as a shield to bypass your defenses. You must look at this through the lens of a survivor. This is not a social call. It is a breach attempt. You never open the door, not a crack, not for a second. You speak through the wood or a reinforced window. You must dissociate the face you know from the threat they present. If you open the door to give a crying child a sandwich, you have just signaled that you have a caloric surplus and that your perimeter is permeable. Within hours, you will be overrun. Keep the door shut, offer your verbal regrets, and understand that their lack of preparation is not your emergency. To maintain this level of discipline, you cannot run your house like a democracy. You must implement the dictator protocol. In a modern family, we value consensus and voting, but when resources are finite and stress is lethal, debate burns calories and wastes time. You need to hold a family meeting now, before the crisis, and establish a clear chain of command. Designate one leader whose word is final during an emergency. This isn't about ego, it's about efficiency. To prevent mutiny within your own walls, establish a strict grievance window, a specific 10-minute period each day where family members can vent their fears and complaints without judgment. Outside of that window, the focus is purely on the execution of survival tasks. This structure gives your family the psychological security of knowing someone is in charge, preventing the internal panic that destroys groups from the inside out. With your internal structure set, you need to manage your external signature using the gray man facade. If your house is the only one on the block with a smell of cooking bacon or the hum of a generator, you are painting a target on your back. You need to curate an appearance of destitution that matches or exceeds that of your neighbors. Use heavy blackout curtains, not just to block light, but to block the visual cues of life. Do not cook aromatic foods during the day when the scent can travel. Eat your cold rations or cook in the dead of night. If you have trash, don't leave it in neat bags on the curb. That implies order and consumption. Pile debris near your door to simulate looting or neglect. You want the desperate neighbor to look at your house and think, there is nothing left in there for me. You are using their own hopelessness as your camouflage. Finally, you must assume that your neighbors are learning and adapting, which requires you to employ a dynamic routine. A static security plan is a failed security plan because your neighbors are watching you. If you always check the perimeter at 8 a.m. and always sleep from midnight to 6 a.m., a predator will map your gaps. You need to randomize your pattern. Change your sleep shifts every 24 hours. Never leave your house via the same exit twice. Alter the times you allow low light movement. By becoming unpredictable, you make the cost of attacking you too high. The desperate neighbor is looking for an easy win, and by constantly shifting your defensive posture, you signal that you are a hard target, pushing them to move on to a softer, more predictable victim. Civilization is nothing more than a thin veneer of politeness stretched over primal biological need, and when that veneer cracks, the only thing that separates you from the chaos is your refusal to cling to the old rules. You don't need millions of dollars in a bunker. You need the 3-inch screws in your door frame, the discipline to lie to a friend's face, and the cold rationality to prioritize your family's survival over social nicety. Return to that hallway in your mind. The power is out, the silence is heavy, and Tim is knocking on the door, jiggling the handle. But this time, the strike plate holds firm against the frame. The blackout curtains hide your movement. You don't feel guilt. You feel the weight of responsibility for the people inside your shelter. You don't open the door. You wait, silent and invisible, until the footsteps fade away. You have survived not because you were stronger, but because you were willing to do what was necessary. I want you to go to the comments right now and answer this question. Could you look a hungry friend in the eye and say no to save your family? Let me know. Like the video if you want to survive, and stay sharp.